Hello there, my name is Dylan Gabbard, and today I am going to be presenting my TCOM 204 presentation. We're going to be talking about the representation of Alzheimer's in media and how it's changed over the years. To start things off, we have my rhetorical statement, which is as follows. Within the past couple decades, the media has gone from making a joke out of Alzheimer's disease to portraying it as serious and non-comical. So before we get into anything else, let's talk about some of those portrayals that were not taken so seriously. Up until about the mid-2000s, I would say, Alzheimer's and other dementias were never taken seriously in media, specifically sitcoms and comedy movies. So here are a few examples I've chosen. There are tons online of different examples from the 70s, 80s, 90s era. Right here we have the drill sergeant from Family Guy, who basically the entire scene with him is just making fun of the fact that he's old and that he can't remember the private's name, and Peter talks about how he has Alzheimer's, and it's pretty much just making fun of that for about 3 minutes. And then right here we have Dr. Kelso from Scrubs, which again, it's a sitcom, so this is to be expected, but they have an entire episode where they're trying to convince him that he has Alzheimer's because he's getting old, and they have him forgetting a lot of things. And then over here we have Aunt Bethany from the Christmas Vacation movie. If you don't remember, in that scene in that movie, she is eating Christmas dinner with the rest of the family, and she's being very forgetful and just messing a lot of things up. Again, there's a common thing with all of these. They are all older in age. If it's not explicitly said that they either have Alzheimer's, it is definitely implied that they have some sort of dementia. So the first artifact that we're going to be taking a look at is a 6-hour-long album called Everywhere at the End of Time. This album was released gradually over the course of 2016, 2017, 2018, and then ending in 2019. Each hour of the album represents a different stage of the Alzheimer's diagnosis, with the first hour being very bright, very melodic and happy, and then the middle stage, the third stage, is very chaotic, but there's still some recognition of earlier tracks, and then the final stage is completely unrecognizable. You can't even tell what you're hearing. It's just pure chaos, and we're going to be taking a look at 3 different sections of that album that I cut together. We're going to be taking a look at the first stage, the middle stage, and the last stage. Let me go ahead and get the lights before we do this. So as you heard here, the first stage is representing the early stages of Alzheimer's, when you still remember the most of your life and you have just settled down and you're really old and you've put this life behind you and you've lived a very fulfilling life and it's all happy. And then obviously as the album goes along, it just gets way more depressing and way more upsetting until obviously the end of the album is it just closing off, representing the death of the person. Next, we're going to be talking about the 2014 film Still Alice, which is based off of the 2007 novel with the same name. It's about a woman in her early 50s that recently got diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and it's an extremely brutal realization of what Alzheimer's actually is and the fact that it can actually set in at a fairly young age. One thing I really like about this film is how it deals with familial Alzheimer's, which I feel like isn't talked a lot about in film. At least I can't find any early examples of, something dealing with genetic Alzheimer's. We're going to be taking a look at a clip here in a few seconds of right after she finds out that she has Alzheimer's, right after the diagnosis. She goes home to tell her family, and this is a very devastating scene. Unfortunately, it represents a conversation that many families have had. Let me go ahead and get the lights real quick.
I've been seeing a neurologist for the past few months, and I have Alzheimer's disease. Early onset.
That doesn't make sense. Are you sure?
There is no doubt she has the disease.
But at her age,
It is rare, but it has been confirmed.
You're so young. I don't understand that.
Now, in this scene, we see her present this news to the family, and it's very devastating. And I think that the novel definitely did a much better job at this whole sequence. But nevertheless, it does show that Alzheimer's is a very serious disease. It isn't funny. It isn't for comedy. It is an extremely devastating thing that a lot of families go through, including my own, which I'll be talking about in a second with our next artifact, The Father. This is a 2020 Oscar award-winning film featuring Anthony Hopkins, who got the Oscar for presenting Alzheimer's in a very dark and scary take that I haven't seen before. What I really like about this film is that you see Alzheimer's set in through the main character's perspective. And because of that, it messes with his memory and it creates a psychological drama film that is really interesting and fascinating. And what you're going to see soon is a man in his late 80s, around there at least, pretty much regressing into a toddler-like behavior. He starts calling for his mother, and his caretaker tries to take care of him and comfort him. And it's a very devastating thing because this exact scene that you're about to watch is something that I went through a lot with my grandfather who had passed away from Alzheimer's. This is a very real thing that happens. It's not funny. It's not really taken as a joke at all because, again, I think the writers of this film really understand that this disease is terrifying. Let me get the light so we can play this scene.
I want my mommy. I want my mommy. I'm gonna get out of here. Have someone come and fetch me.
No, shh.
No, I want my mommy. I want her to come and fetch me. I want to go home.
So as we've seen in this scene here, Anthony Hopkins playing this character does a really brutal job at showing a regression into toddler-like behavior. This is something that my grandfather had gone through, where in his late stages of Alzheimer's, just like this movie is showing, he would believe that he was going to see his parents, even though they had been dead for 10 plus years. This is a very upsetting scene, and I can see how it would make a lot of people uncomfortable, especially if they aren't too familiar with the nature of the disease, if they had seen, only comical portrayals. But I think that this scene really just shows that it isn't funny, and even though I can see somehow this being twisted and turned into a joke, this film does a great job, the entire length of the film, showing that no, it's not a joke. This is a very real thing. And with my conclusion, I wanted to end off on a quote from Julianne Moore, who played Alice in the film Still Alice. She says, "I think you're never more in love with life than you are in the presence of death or your own mortality." I love this quote because it kind of sums up everything that I'm talking about. Alzheimer's is a devastating disease that can leave people completely forgetting who they are, their loved ones, their past, and their entire life. It almost feels as if you live an entire fulfilling life, and then by the end, you don't even remember one day. That's not a funny concept, and I think what you have seen today, hopefully, is that this is a very serious disease, and I'm really glad to see that media has started to show that it isn't funny, and that this needs to be taken more seriously. So I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. I hope you learned a lot today about the nature of this disease, and that it isn't funny, and that the representation has changed. Thank you. Here are my references.